guys! Welcome to our channel, Learn English with Podcast. Have you ever been in a conversation and felt like your brain just froze because you couldn't find the right words in English? It happens to the best of us. But here's the thing. If you want to sound natural and speak fluently, the secret isn't just memorizing vocabulary or grammar. It's about thinking in English. When your brain starts thinking directly in English, you stop pausing to translate, and speaking becomes automatic, just like it does in your native language. It's not magic, it's practice. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into today. How to train your brain to think in English so you can speak confidently and without hesitation. Let's get started. But before we dive into today's topic, let's quickly introduce today's guests, Alan and Alice. They are here to help us train our brains to think in English. Let's get started.
Hey Alice, quick question. Have you ever been in the middle of an English conversation and suddenly freeze up, trying to find the right word?
Ugh, all the time. It's like my brain just stalls and I end up translating everything in my head. It's so frustrating.
Exactly. That's a classic sign we're not thinking in English yet. Instead, we're relying on our first language to fill in the gaps.
Right, but what if we could train our brains to just think in English? No more pauses, no more translation. Just smooth, natural conversation.
Now that would be amazing. And here's the thing, thinking in English isn't just about speaking well. It's the key to actually feeling confident and fluent in the language. When your brain switches to English naturally, your speaking becomes faster and more fluid.
So you're saying it's like a mental shortcut? The more we practice thinking in English, the less we need to translate?
Exactly. Imagine it like a muscle you're training. The more you work on it, the stronger and more automatic it becomes. And today, we're diving into how to actually train our brains to make that switch.
I'm all in. I mean, we all want to speak confidently, but it starts inside our heads, right?
Right. So, let's kick off with some ways we can surround ourselves with English and start thinking in it daily.
So, Alan, one of the first things people often hear when it comes to thinking in English is immerse yourself in the language. But what does that really mean?
Great question. Immersion is all about surrounding yourself with English in every part of your life. It's like creating an environment where English is the norm, even if you're not in an English-speaking country.
So it's not just about sitting down with a textbook all day, right? It's about making English part of your daily routine.
Exactly. For example, start watching TV shows and movies in English. You know, I switched to watching all my favorite shows in English a while ago. Even if I don't understand every word, I get used to the rhythm, tone, and vocabulary.
I do that too. But I make it even more fun by watching with English subtitles. That way, I can read along and pick up new words while still hearing them in context.
Smart move. And the best part? You start thinking in English without even realizing it. When you're re-watching your favorite show, you're not translating. You're just understanding in English.
That's so true. And it's not just TV shows. I started listening to podcasts in English during my morning jog. It's a simple way to get that English input while doing something I enjoy.
Exactly, you can listen while cooking, cleaning, commuting, or even exercising. The key is to fill your day with English in a way that feels natural, not forced.
Right? And what I love about immersion is that it's not just about learning new words. It's also about picking up the feel of the language, like how people use phrases and slang in real life.
Totally, it's like you're learning to think the way native speakers do. It's not just about memorizing grammar rules. It's about understanding the flow of conversation, the pauses, the expressions.
And what's awesome is that you don't need to be perfect. Just expose yourself to English as much as possible. The more you hear it, the easier it'll be for your brain to switch to thinking in it.
Right? Immersion isn't just about passive learning. It's about making English a natural part of your life. So, what can we do next? Let's talk about how we can practice thinking in English during our daily activities. All right, Alice, we've talked about immersion, but here's the next big thing. Practicing thinking in English during everyday tasks. It sounds simple, but it really works.
Absolutely. Think about all the things you do in a day. You don't need to be in an English-speaking country to practice. Just start with your routine activities like making breakfast.
Exactly. Instead of thinking, I need to make eggs and toast, you can start thinking, I need to make eggs and toast in English. The moment you switch to English for even these small thoughts, you're training your brain.
And it's not just cooking, right? Like even when I'm walking to work, I can practice. I'll mentally describe things I see. The sun is shining. There's a dog walking by. The trees are swaying in the breeze.
I love that. It's about narrating your day to yourself. It could be anything, getting dressed, planning your to-do list, or even thinking about what to say in your next meeting. The goal is to get comfortable with English in your everyday life.
It's funny, I started doing this last week. I'll walk into a store, and instead of thinking in my native language, I'll mentally go through the conversation in English. Like, I'll ask for the price of that shirt in English. If they say it's too expensive, I'll politely say, that's too much.
Exactly. It's about getting out of your head and making English the language of your mind. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel. And guess what? You'll start noticing your brain switches to English without you even realizing it.
Yeah, and it's all about consistency. At first, it might feel awkward or even forced, but the more you practice thinking in English during simple moments, the easier it will become. Like when I'm shopping or even when I'm at the gym, I'll think in English as I plan my workout.
Totally. And the best part? You're not just practicing your vocabulary and grammar, you're re-practicing real-life thinking in English, decisions, reflections, even little conversations in your head.
Exactly. So, next time you're stuck in traffic or doing the dishes, try this Think in English. It's a simple, powerful way to train your brain without feeling like you're studying.
Right? And before you know it, English will become your default thinking language.
All right, Alan, we've talked about immersing ourselves in English and practicing during our daily activities. But here's a trap I see a lot of learners fall into: trying to think in English but making it too complicated.
Oh, totally. I get it. Sometimes we want to sound fancy and use big words, but that's actually not the best way to start thinking in English. You've got to keep it simple.
Exactly. Think about the little things you can say to yourself throughout the day, simple, everyday thoughts. Like, I'm hungry or it's cold outside. You don't need to start by mentally planning an entire speech in English.
Right? You need to get your brain used to thinking in English without overwhelming it. Start small. For example, when you wake up in the morning, instead of thinking, I need to get out of bed, think, time to get up. It's short, simple, and gets your brain into the English groove.
Exactly. And even when you're out and about, don't worry about crafting perfect sentences. Just say things like, I need to buy coffee or I like this song. Simple stuff that will get your brain thinking in English naturally.
Just don't overcomplicate it. If you try to jump right into complex sentences, you will feel stuck. But if you stick to the basics and make it part of your day-to-day thinking, you'll see improvements so much faster.
Totally. And don't forget, thinking in English doesn't mean using perfect grammar all the time. It's about training your brain to be comfortable with English no matter how simple the thought.
Exactly. Start with the simple stuff, and as you get better, your thoughts will naturally become more complex. The key is consistency. Think in English every day, and soon it will feel natural. All right, Alice, we've covered external practices like immersion, but here's something that really helps: using English in your internal conversations.
Oh, I love this one. Internal conversations are those little chats you have with yourself throughout the day. You know, when you're thinking about what to do next or reflecting on something that happened.
Exactly. Most of the time, we're talking to ourselves in our native language. But if we switch that to English, it's like giving our brain extra practice, even when we're not talking out loud.
For sure. Like when I'm deciding what to eat for lunch, I'll think, what do I want to eat? Maybe a sandwich or a salad. It's simple, but it gets my brain thinking in English automatically.
Right? It doesn't have to be a big conversation. Just the tiny thoughts you have during your day in English. This adds up over time and helps your brain make the switch.
And soon you'll notice that English becomes your default for those internal chats. It's like your brain just gets used to it.
Exactly. And that's when things start feeling a lot smoother in real conversations too.
All right, Alan, let's get real for a second. How do we actually measure progress when it comes to thinking in English? I mean, it's not like you can see a bar graph for it, right?
Yeah. It's not like a fitness tracker where you can check your steps. But here's the trick. Set daily goals for your English thinking. Just like you'd aim to work out every day, you can aim to practice thinking in English daily.
I love that. So, what kind of goals are we talking about?
It can be anything. For example, one goal could be, I'll think in English for 10 minutes while getting ready in the morning. It doesn't need to be long, just consistent.
Right, and maybe the next day you could aim for 15 minutes or challenge yourself to use more complex sentences. Slowly build up the time and complexity just like a workout.
Exactly. And you don't need to set huge goals every day. Even a simple goal like think in English while walking to the store is a win.
I like that. And what's cool is that setting these small, achievable goals gives you a sense of accomplishment. You're tracking progress even if it's not obvious at first.
Yep, and as you do it daily, thinking in English becomes second nature. You won't even need to remind yourself anymore.
Exactly. Consistency is the key. Just like building a muscle, the more you work at it, the stronger your English thinking will get.
So, Alice, we've covered a lot today, right? From immersing ourselves in English to setting goals and practicing during our routines. But there's one key ingredient we haven't talked about enough.
Oh, I know what you were going to say, patience. This isn't going to happen overnight.
Exactly. Thinking in English takes time. It's not a switch you can flip instantly. But with consistency, those small moments of practice will pay off.
Yeah, and the key is not getting discouraged. There will be days when you feel like you're not making progress, but trust me, every little bit counts.
Right? So, don't rush the process. Focus on those small wins every day. Little by little, English will become second nature in your mind.
Exactly. So start simple, set goals, and practice daily. And remember, it's all about patience and consistency. That's how you'll train your brain to think in English.
Keep going, stay patient, and soon you'll realize that English is just how you think. You've got this.
And we're here cheering you on every step of the way. Keep practicing, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for watching. Your journey to better English and unstoppable confidence starts here. Like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep growing together. See you in the next video, champion.